Let's do some drywall.
Hey YouTubers, look at this. Popcorn ceiling. Yes, there is popcorn ceiling in some of these jobs we go to. In the ideal world, if you're going to have popcorn ceilings, you want to hire a company to come out and refinish your ceilings. Of course, you want to do something like that before you move all your furniture in a house, or when you move out, when the rooms are cleared out, because it is a messy process. I usually don't do popcorn removal jobs. I leave that up to the people that deal with that stuff, because it is a messy trade and it is very tedious and messy. It's too much work for me to do by myself. That's why I just do drywall repairs. I'm just a drywall repairman, and they called me here to patch in this hole that a plumber cut out to access the P-trap plumbing above. Once he got it fixed, they called me in to come patch it up. With this as a popcorn texture, a lot of stores quit selling popcorn, so you have to call around to find the popcorn material. I know larger stores, they have the stuff in a spray can. Never use popcorn in a spray can. That stuff is a gimmick. It never looks correct. You'll have issues with it. Don't even waste your time. If you need big bag of popcorn to do a patch like this, when I spray out this little patch, it's going to be a 4x4 foot area, so I'm going to need just under a half a bucket of spray popcorn texture. Once you get your plastic up, you always want to scrape the old popcorn out a couple inches past the patch, because when we do put a new sheetrock in the patch hole, we want to be able to tape and feather out our mud past the patch. Scrape all the loose stuff out. Right here, there's a joint seam here, so I'm just digging out the joint seam, scraping it all out with a 6-inch knife, get all that loose stuff out of there, the old tape, any loose stuff. Once I get all that loose stuff out of there, I want to go through and, of course, add some screws to tighten up the sheetrock. This is a garage. Most garages have 5/8 sheetrock for code. It's a 5/8 fire-rated sheetrock. It's code. I've been in a lot of jobs, and a lot of them don't have 5/8, but you just want to match what's there. You get a 5/8 sheetrock. I got to use screws that will reach 5/8 drywall. So I'm using 1.5-inch drywall screws, or 1.75-inch drywall screws to tighten up the existing ceiling. Just like any patch, you want to add screws on the outside edges of the patches and the framing to tighten up the area. You don't want a loose patch area to re-crack out. Add plenty of screws. I like to add screws every 2 to 4 inches. Plenty of screws, plenty of screws. Screws are cheap. Coming back to fix a job because it cracked out is not cheap. On the original tape seam that I dug out, I want to add plenty of screws in there. Also on the outside edge. You just want to take your time. We're not in a hurry. It's just easier with this prep work. Sometimes just start mudding is the easy part. It's getting everything ready for sheetrocking and all the prep work. That's where all the tedious prep work. There's more work in that than there is an actual drywall repair process. Add plenty of screws. I'm adding backing. If you don't add backing, you're going to have to cut it back out from stud to stud. And then the project's going to be a lot bigger and more expensive. So we just patch in the area. I use 1x2s. A lot of guys like 1x2s or 2x4s or wood sheeting. Use whatever's comfortable with you, whatever you have on hand, whatever you can afford, that's what you use. I like these 1x2s because they're easy and small, and I carry a bucket of them, so they're ready to go for these patch jobs. Add plenty of screws and backing. You want to at least add 1 screw on each side of the backing. 1 screw is not enough, so add plenty of screws. Once you get it all ready, just make sure everything's prepped, scraped up, ready to go. You can see this area, of course, is a bigger area than just the patch. The homeowner, of course, ain't going to pay to cut out a large section of drywall like that needs to be cut out, 4x4, 4x6. The job would double in cost. It's just a popcorn patch, so we're just going to fix it up, make it nice and sprayed texture, and they'll never know there was any damage. I have a sanding pole. You necessarily don't have to sand pull the edges of popcorn, but if you have a sanding pole handy, it doesn't hurt to sand it. All we're doing is just fading that edge. Kind of like any other patchwork, you want to fade the edge, blend in the edge. So when you do spray the texture, it's going to blend in nicely. I got a couple nails in the old framing, so I'm just pulling the nails, loose paper here, just get everything cleaned up. Take your measurements, your sheetrock. You want to make sure you're using the correct type of sheetrock, either 1/2 inch or 5/8. This is 5/8, so once I got the piece cut out, get in there pretty good. Add plenty of screws. Same thing, you want to add screws every 2 to 4 inches. Plenty of screws. Get it nice and tight. You don't want loose patches. Everybody thinks you just need to put a couple screws in a patch. You need to get plenty of screws and patches, at least both sides of a patch. If not, at least 2 sides, 3 sides, 4 sides is ideal. Plenty of screws. Get it nice and tightened up. Once we get this all screwed up and ready to go, we're going to use a fiberglass mesh tape. I always use fiberglass mesh tapes because it is stronger than paper tape, and it's ideal for doing repairs, especially when you're working with hot muds. Always use a fiberglass tape. It's stronger than paper, and it'll give you a sense of security that you'll never get a re-crack. If something cracks after fiberglass, then you know there's something going on, some kind of movement, structural issues. Plenty of fiberglass tape. Any gaps, you can double layer the fiberglass. The materials we're going to use, I'm using a hot mud, a 5-minute mud. If you weren't going to use a hot mud, you use a regular joint compound. You would just do this process, but you'd have to let the joint compound dry overnight before you can do the next step. I'm just putting fiberglass here. I'm even doing a cross. I'm going across diagonally with the fiberglass. You don't have to do this, but if, hey, we're here, make it nice and clean. Here I'm just using a 5-minute mud, 5-minute quick set mud. If you're not comfortable with hot muds, never use hot muds. I'm just pushing the mud in the gap here in the fiberglass. It's filling in through the fiberglass, so I know the mud gets inside the gaps. Then I'm just doing a nice heavy first coat. The good thing with these popcorn textures, you can spray them really heavy and you don't have to have a perfect patch. Usually you can get away with doing a nice good first coat and then slicking it out or sanding it out and then doing a popcorn right over it. If you're not comfortable with that, I always do a second coat then. But we don't want to put a big clump of mud on there. We're just doing like a skim tight first coat. I'm using a 5-minute mud. And we're just going to let this set up. It takes about 4 to 6 minutes for 5-minute muds to set up. If you're not comfortable with hot muds, always use either 20, 40, 90-minute mud or just a joint compound mud. The mud's setting up. I'm just taking a wet sponge, just like in my other videos, a wet sponge slick out technique. I'm just taking wet sponge and using my 6-inch knife and taking the excess mud. I'm pushing down hard so it's taking off the extra mud, plus it's pushing it in the grooves of the tape, and it's basically almost like a second coat technique, slicking it out. I call this slicking out hot mud. With 5-minute muds, you want to wait at least 4 minutes and start working with it. You don't want it to fully set up. You got to work with hot muds as they're setting up. If you let them set up, you're going to get in trouble because the stuff sets up like a cement. Once it's all slicked out and ready to go, just give it a few minutes to dry and set up. But this area is ready for a spray popcorn texture. This is the stuff I use, Westpac. It's not, you don't have to get Westpac, but this is the stuff I'm trying to match up here. I already had some mixed up, but it's just a powder form. It's like mud with styrofoam in it. Mix it up with a stomper. You mix it up with your hand, add water, and you just mix it up. Nothing to it. I usually like to mix it up before I start the job and let it set for 30 minutes to an hour. You want to thicken it up. You don't want it too thin because you don't want to just be spraying water. You need a little bit of water in it though, so it will spray and stick to the wall. Spray tip. You want the biggest spray tip on your hopper for popcorn ceilings. So let's ready. I'm going to show you how to do some popcorn. Just get all this stuff away. You only want to mix enough of popcorn that you're going to use. And you want to just fill up your hopper. We're going to spray this thing heavy. You just use it all. It's easier to use it and put it on the ceiling than it is to clean it up and wash it up. A full hopper here. I'm spraying it at full air pressure. Turn the valve up all the way. We got to spray it full pressure, and I'm just crossing it. Go nice and slow. I'm filling in the angle area. Nice and slow, consistent, even patterns. Just spraying it heavy, spraying it heavy. Nice, consistent patterns. A lot of guys think you just spray every direction. You got to keep consistent patterns, whatever direction you're going to go. And you want to make the patch nice and even. I'm basically spraying out the patch, and then I'm going to feather it out past the patch so it blends in nicely. You want to use up all the popcorn